Alright guys, it's the end of another interesting month. So it's time to review what's happened and what's coming up next month. So I'm going to start off with one of the big ones this week, which was Urogen. So as you might remember from my last video, Urogen had just narrowly missed out from a favourable AdCom. So the statistical chances of the FDA giving an approval made it less likely that they were going to get an approval than if they actually would. So it was a pleasant surprise as an investor when the FDA decided to grant approval to UGN 102. If we take a look at the stock chart here, we can see the significant uptick that's over a tripling of where it was after the AdCom. However, you can see that it hasn't really raised that significantly from before the AdCom. Now this was quite a surprise for me. I was really expecting this to go to around the $20 mark. However, I think this is related to a couple of things. First of all, if we go to finances and at the balance sheet, we can see here that they really don't have that much in the way of short-term cash. And if we go to the income statement, we can see how that's going to be a problem when they're running through about $100 million per year. And on top of that, if we go to the Johnson & Johnson website, we can see that their TAR-200 monotherapy is showing really good response rates. And if you add that to the fact that it should be more convenient for the end user, so we can start to see why people might be worried about Urogen. I'm not saying it's not worth investing, because they could still get a big piece of the pie here, which would make them worth much more than they currently are. So you'll just have to decide on your own risk-reward profile. So we go back to Tic Taco and into my favorites. Another big one this week is Capricor. So if we go to the stock chart, go for the last month, we can see the massive drop off it had here from $12 all the way down. I believe it went down to $6 at one point during the day, and it's since recovered somewhat to $11. So this big drop off was mostly due to this news that came out. So the Chief Medical and Science Officer, Vinay Prasad, ousted this lady here, Nicole Vernon. Now this is quite important because she's been seen as an advocate for gene therapy. And then on top of that, the FDA cancelled the AdCom meeting, which was set for the end of next month. Now I guess all of this news at once made people speculate that Vinay Prasad doesn't want Deomiocel to be approved. And this article in Stat seems to strongly imply that. But as of yet, there's been no concrete proof showing that to be the case. In fact, I was looking at this Guardian article, and inside here is two pieces of information. The first here is that he's been pushing for stronger regulations, especially around rare diseases like Duchenne muscular dystrophy. But actually when you look deeper into this, this is just around Sarepta Therapeutics. And perhaps he had a good point here considering the recent news about the dying patients from Sarepta Therapeutics. That doesn't mean that he has something against Capricor Therapeutics, who look like they have some really solid data. And the other side of what is said here is that he wants to make the trials less bureaucratic and expensive. So actually this supports the side that he wants to get rid of the AdCom because he thinks that the data is so strong that it's just not needed. Of course, us as investors can only speculate at this point. There's been no concrete evidence one way or the other. And as we can see from the chart, the stock has mostly bounced back now. Unfortunately for me, I had some leveraged positions on this day, so I've actually lost my stake now in Capricor. However, I'm tempted to put more money down closer to the day, depending on what the stock price is. So next, if I go back to favorites, another company that had some big news this month was Aquestive. So if we go to their website and go to press releases, we can see here that they got approval for their new drug application of Anaphylm. Unfortunately, they didn't get the priority review that they were hoping for, but they now have a PDUFA date for the end of January 2026. So heading back to the main list, so I'm still keeping track on Ardelyx, and something of note this month are the purchases by one of the directors, David Mott. Now, for anyone following the stock, you'll know that David Mott has been making several large purchases over the last few months, probably up to a year. And if we scroll down, we can see all of the buys here are basically from David Mott. And they're very significant. You've got one that's nearly $1 million here, 400,000, 1.6 million, 300,000, 700,000, 700,000. Really big purchases. So it's quite clear that David Mott believes in this company. However, the big thing you have to balance that with is Michael Raab. Now this is the CEO of the company, and it seems like he's just doing everything he can to sell as many shares as possible. You can see these big sales here of 200 grand, 200 grand, 200 grand, these big chunks of 200 grand, and that's once every month. So he's getting a $200,000 bonus every month. Not exactly what you want to see as an investor of this company. So this is a double-sided coin, but David Mott is purchasing more than Michael Rabb and the other directors put together. So something you'd want to be aware of if you're investing in this company. Then if I go back to the list and tick-a-taco, the last one that I wanted to talk about is ImmunityBio. So if we go to their website, and they had this quite exciting piece of news, which we can see here, is that the FDA has granted expanded access authorization, and that's for the treatment of lymphopenia with Anktiva. Now, although there aren't currently any trials for lymphopenia, and they're not going to be able to make any money out of this designation, I still see this as a significant green flag because it really gives ImmunityBio a means to show off the effectiveness of Anktiva. If they can show a significant difference here, then it's really going to create that paradigm shift towards Anktiva. So let's hope for solid results from this designation. So that actually brings me to the end of all of the updates from the previous month. Like I say, it's been a really important month for these stocks, and it's not even been an earnings call month. So let's take a look ahead to see what's going to be happening next month. So I go to Catalysts, and so we have Iova. So we have Iova here at the top of the list, and this is coming to the end of the period when they said they were expecting United Kingdom approval. In fact, they said the first half of this year, so that will be finishing in a couple of days. So if that's the case, then they will already be late for that approval. I've also read some articles saying that they might not be able to make that money from the therapy abroad. This is because they've already been struggling to make their money in the USA, and to make that money abroad, they're going to need partnerships. However, I'm a bit more optimistic here. For me, I was already expecting that they would get partnerships. And on top of that, I think the troubles that they're having at the moment in the USA, I'm hoping are just teething issues, and those problems will diminish with time. So we can also see that they potentially have the Canadian approval upcoming, and then ImmunityBio have the colon cancer phase 2 results expected in the last half of the year. At this point, I feel that ImmunityBio really need a win. I think it's a great product that shows a lot of potential, but they need to justify the amount of money that they're spending and the debt that they are in. And also for Iova, they have the phase 2 results of the non-small cell lung cancer. Again, that's expected sometime in the second half of the year. We have the European approval expected in the second half of the year. And then ImmunityBio have the lung cancer phase 3 results expected in the third quarter of this year. I've really got my fingers crossed for this one because I think this could be a turning point for ImmunityBio. So that's it for next month. There's actually no important concrete events that I know about coming up next month. However, any one of these broader timeline events could happen within this period. So hopefully I'll have another exciting month to report to you next month. As always, if you've enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.